At the Christmas dinner, my father's fork clattered against the plate just before his words did. "She's just a stupid widow, shut up." He said it loud enough to rattle the silverware, sharp enough to slice the laughter that had been circling the table. My 9-year-old daughter froze, eyes wide, cheeks burning. The smell of ham and cinnamon rolls went sour in my nose. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. They just stared at their plates or at the candles like if they kept quiet long enough the sentence would vanish. It didn't vanish. It hung in the air foul and heavy like smoke after a cheap firework. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I picked up my phone thumb, already sliding across the screen to record, tucked it against the edge of the plate, and let the microphone drink in every word. Then I stood, pulled my daughter gently from her chair, and said, calm as a soldier at parade rest, "Come on, sweetheart." We walked out. No coat, no leftovers, no looking back. Just the two of us stepping into the winter night, our breath turning white. Behind me, his voice rose again. Something about me being ungrateful, about me embarrassing him in front of family. But the door closed and muffled him to nothing. I buckled my daughter into the car. Her lip trembled, but she didn't cry. She looked at me, waiting for my cue. I smiled at her. A real smile. "It's over," I said. "His humiliation of us is over." She tilted her head. That was his last mistake. "Yes," I whispered. "That was his last mistake. You need to understand how we got to that Christmas table. That insult wasn't born that night. It was the end of a long road my father had paved with arrogance and control, a road I'd walked my whole life, often in silence. To most people in our small town, Jack Cole is respectable pillar of the VFW, steady hand at the farm, the kind of man who shakes every hand at the county fair. But behind doors, his voice carried another weight. To him, strength meant dominance. Kindness meant weakness. And daughters were meant to nod, smile, and stay grateful. I'd once believed he was proud of me. After all, I followed a path few women in our county did. I enlisted. U.S. Army Military Police. I trained hard, deployed twice to Iraq. Learned disciplined chain of command, how to keep my chin high, even in a storm of sand and doubt. But to my father, none of it counted. When I came home in uniform medals pinned to my chest, he waved a dismissive hand. "Parades don't pay bills," he said. "Soldiering isn't farming." When Daniel and I married Daniel, another soldier, strong and quiet, my father smiled for the wedding photo, then muttered afterward, "Better hope he sticks around. You'll never manage on your own." Daniel did stick. Through training, through deployment, through the birth of our daughter June. He stuck until one August afternoon when a chaplain and a casualty officer walked up my porch steps and took my world with a folded flag. That's when the "just a widow" line began first. Whispered, then muttered, then shouted. By the Christmas dinner, I'd spent more than a year being managed, instructed, second-guessed. My father hovered over every decision like it was his to make. He offered to help with the survivor benefits. Suggested I park Daniel's insurance payout in a farm account, reminded me that a single mom needs guidance. I let some of it slide at first. Grief makes you tired, and tired people sometimes nod just to keep the noise down. But tired doesn't mean blind. I noticed numbers not lining up. I noticed receipts with no purchases. I noticed the way his tone shifted when I asked a direct question, like a commander annoyed his soldier had spoken out of turn. Still, I didn't confront him in front of others. Not yet. I waited. That's what military life had taught me. Patience isn't weakness. Patience is strategy. So when he snapped at me that night, when he spat the words that had lived in his mouth for months, "Stupid widow," I knew I had enough. I had proof in my files, recordings on my phone, and witnesses in the room who would remember the silence that followed. What I needed was the resolve to carry it through. Leaving that house wasn't surrender. It was regrouping. Back home, I tucked June into bed. She clutched the stuffed rabbit Daniel had bought her at the post exchange before his last deployment. Her small voice cracked, "Mom, why does Grandpa hate you?" I brushed her hair back. "He doesn't hate me. He doesn't understand me. But that doesn't matter anymore." She blinked up at me. "Because we left." "Yes, because we left." After she slept, I sat at the kitchen table, alone. The documents were still stacked where I'd left them. Copies of trust deeds, bank statements, correspondence my father never thought I'd keep. Daniel's boots sat by the back door, polished leather catching the moonlight. I pulled them close, set them by my chair, and rested my bare feet against their toes. It was my ritual, my way of remembering the man who had believed in me, not belittled me. And as I sat there, I whispered into the quiet, "We're done being managed. We're done being humiliated. We're soldiers. We endure, we adapt, we fight smart." That night, I pressed stop on the recording from dinner and saved the file to 3 different places: my phone, my laptop, a thumb drive hidden in Daniel's boots. It wasn't just a memory anymore. It was evidence. And evidence changes everything. Snow still clung to the gutters the morning after Christmas, heavy and wet, bending the pine branches outside my window. I sipped lukewarm coffee and replayed the recording again. My father's voice filled the kitchen, sharp, dismissive, cruel. Each time I heard it, my chest tightened, but not from shame anymore, from resolve. I thought about the path that had led me here. People in town saw a widow, a daughter, a woman holding on by a thread. They didn't see the years before the army years that had shaped me into someone who didn't fold under pressure. I joined the Army Military Police at 21 against my father's advice. Waste of time, he'd said. Women don't need uniforms. They need husbands. His voice had dripped with the kind of certainty only men like him think they're entitled to. But I had grit in my bones and something to prove. Basic training at Fort Leonard Wood broke me down and rebuilt me. I learned how to march until my feet bled, how to shoot straight, how to command a room without raising my voice. I wore my first chevrons like armor. When I deployed to Iraq in 2007, my father barely shook my hand goodbye. The desert taught me patience. Long hours on convoy duty, watching endless sand roll by, taught me that survival wasn't about being the loudest, it was about being steady. Every day, I wrote notes in a little green army notebook, dates, details, small observations, a habit that never left me. That's how I met Daniel. He was with the engineers fixing roads and building what others had destroyed. His hands were calloused. His laugh was quiet. He didn't need to be the loudest in the room either. He carried his authority like a steady flame. We married on a rainy spring day. Back home, his uniform pressed my hair tucked under a small white veil. My father walked me down the aisle stiff as a statue, his eyes saying, "She thinks she knows better." But Daniel believed in me. He never once called me stupid. He called me sergeant with a grin even after I left the army. He knew I could handle things. When he was killed overseas, it felt like the world had ripped in two. One half was silence and grief, the other half was noise, paperwork, survivor benefits, phone calls from people who said sorry for your loss like it was a line from a script. My daughter June was only 7 then. She clutched the folded flag at the funeral with both arms like it was the only solid thing in the world. My father didn't cry. He shook hands at the funeral, accepted casseroles, and muttered about how at least the army pays good death benefits. That was the first time I felt something cold bloom in my chest. It wasn't grief anymore. It was anger. The anger grew when he started offering to help with Daniel's insurance payout. "Park it in the farm account," he said. "Better yield. You don't know what to do with that kind of money anyway." I'd learned plenty about responsibility in the Army. I knew exactly what to do with money, pay bills, save for June's college, keep the lights on. But every time I insisted on handling it myself, his voice grew harder. "You're just a widow. You don't understand." That phrase stuck. Just a widow, not a veteran. Not a mother raising a daughter alone. Not a woman who'd done patrols in Baghdad, who'd stood her ground at checkpoints with an M4 across her chest. Just a widow. By the time Christmas came, the pattern was carved deep. He spoke over me at family gatherings. He corrected me about things I knew better than him. Army paperwork, VA forms, even grocery prices. Every time he said "stupid widow," it was like a strike across the table. But here's the thing about veterans. We log everything. In my head, I'd been logging his slights for months. On paper, too. My habit of note-taking came back. Dates, times, what he said, receipts tucked into folders, copies of trust statements that didn't add up. So when he exploded at Christmas dinner, it wasn't a beginning. It was the end. The culmination of every insult, every dismissal, every attempt to cut me out of my own life. The next morning, I put June in front of cartoons and pulled out the file folders. I flipped through each one like a soldier inventorying gear before a mission. Trust documents my father had drafted after Daniel's death. Bank account statements with unexplained withdrawals, even a quitclaim deed filed with the county, suspiciously dated 3 days after Daniel's funeral. I wasn't a lawyer, but I was trained to read patterns, to spot lies in reports, to keep my eyes sharp. And the pattern was obvious. He'd been siphoning, filing, maneuvering, counting on me to be too broken or too naive to notice. I wasn't naive. I was watching. That evening, Rebecca came by. She was a fellow veteran, now a lawyer, the kind of woman who kept her hair pulled back tight and her files tighter. We'd met through a support group for military widows, and she told me once, "If you ever need legal backup, call me." I slid the Christmas recording across the table. She listened with no expression, then tapped stop. "He said that in front of your daughter." "Yes." Rebecca leaned back, exhaled. "This isn't just cruel. It's coercive control. You've got evidence of financial abuse, too." I pushed the folders toward her. She leafed through them, her brows rising higher with each page. "Amanda, this isn't family drama. This is a case." Her words landed like a gavel. A case. For months, I'd felt like I was drowning in humiliation. Suddenly, I was holding a weapon of my own, the truth documented and ready. That night, June padded out of her room, holding her stuffed rabbit. "Mom," she whispered, "if Grandpa says you're stupid again, can I tell him he's wrong?" I pulled her into my lap. "You don't need to say a word. Just know he's wrong." She frowned fierce. "You were a soldier. Soldiers aren't stupid." Her words carved away the last of the doubt. I kissed her hair. "That's right. Soldiers aren't stupid. And tomorrow, we start proving it." Valentina's office smelled faintly of toner and peppermint tea. She'd served 4 years as an Army finance specialist before becoming a forensic accountant, which meant she understood 2 things perfectly: chain of command and paper. She spread my documents across her conference table in tidy rows, then uncapped a set of highlighters like a medic prepping instruments. "Green is legitimate revenue," she said, tapping ledgers. "Blue is expenses with proper documentation. Orange is questionable. Red is absolutely not." I watched the colors bloom like a heat map of my father's choices. Coupe checks in green, repairs in blue where receipts matched, ATM withdrawals labeled seed on days the store was closed in orange, cash transfers in red that lined up a little too neatly with Moose Lodge poker nights. The patterns jumped out suddenly, undeniable. "You kept good records," she said, approving. "I learned to write everything down," I answered. "Convoy logs, incident reports. If you don't write it, it didn't happen." Valentina smiled quick and fierce. "Then let's make it all happen." Rebecca joined us with a yellow legal pad and a thermos of coffee. She wore that look veteran women get when they recognize another fight worth suiting up for, steady, not theatrical. "We'll need corroboration," she said. "Documents are the spine. People are the muscle." "Like who?" I asked. "Anyone your father talks to when he wants to feel big," Rebecca said. "Men like him audition for admiration in public." The list came easily. Ed, the seed dealer, who knows everyone's planting schedule. Marlene, who balances the co-op books. Pastor Jim, who hears confessions disguised as coffee chatter. The VFW bartender who turns down a mic when a story gets too good. And Rachel, if she would. "We'll also need county records," Valentina added. "Recorder's office? Any deed lien, power of attorney assignment. If he filed a napkin, the clerk scanned it." "Copy everything twice," Rebecca said. "Scan to a drive you keep somewhere he can't accidentally find." And she held up a small keychain device. "This is a pocket recorder. Legal in this state as long as you're part of the conversation. He'll give you something. They always do." I turned the recorder over in my palm. It looked harmless. So had most of the weapons I'd learned to use. We started at the county building, which still smelled like floor wax and ancient heat. The clerk behind the glass peered at me over her readers, then at Rebecca's filing list. "You want the coal farm carton?" she asked with the kind of skepticism that says she's seen families blow up before lunch. "Yes, ma'am," Rebecca said. "And any filings within the last 18 months under Jack Cole, John Cole, J.R. Cole, or Cole Family Trust." The clerk's mouth tightened in a way that wasn't quite a smile. "Gonna be heavy." She disappeared and returned with 3 gray boxes that could have doubled as free weights. We set up at a side table. I slipped on nitrile gloves, the archivist's kind of respect, and began turning pages. Deeds, old surveys, a hand-sketched map from my grandfather's era with the creek drawn like a lazy ribbon. Then newer filings, an occupancy management agreement with language that sounded official and meant nothing. A temporary assignment of beneficiary routing that looked suspiciously like a long way around theft. The forged quitclaim glared up at me like a dare. The notary seal was real, the signature wasn't. "Don't look for perfect forgery," Valentina murmured. "Look for hurry. Fraud runs out of patience." I circled a date with a pencil. 3 days after Daniel's funeral. Same day my father had stood at my sink and told me I was too emotional to make decisions. The pencil pressed darker without my permission. "Copy these," Rebecca said, sliding a stack to the clerk. "Certified." I visited Ed's shop next. He smelled like diesel and coffee and the winter jacket he never zipped all the way. He cleaned his hands on a rag and waved me toward a stool. "Your dad says you're making trouble," he said. "I'm counting," I said. "There's a difference." He grunted. "He's been light on receipts this year. Claims repairs, then pays cash. Says parts are hard to find. With what you showed me?" He tapped the ledger copy I'd brought. "I'll tell a judge what I know." I didn't put a recorder on the counter. I didn't have to. He leaned in and lowered his voice anyway. "Men think no one notices because we're polite," he said. "We notice." Marlene at the co-op was brisk as birds in winter. "I keep duplicate ledgers," she said. "Old habit. Your father never liked that." She flipped to August. Deposits started arriving short. We'd issue a receipt for X. The bank would show X minus a neat little 100 here, 200 there. I thought maybe it was new fees. It wasn't. She met my eyes. "You ready for town talk?" "It started Christmas night," I said. "I'll live." Pastor Jim poured bad coffee and looked like it hurt him not to apologize first. He said, "Widows get foolish," the pastor confessed. "I let it slide. That's on me." "Will you say it under oath?" Rebecca asked. He nodded, cheeks pink. "I'll do better in the room that counts." The VFW potluck came on a Tuesday, the color of tin. I showed up with potato salad and a recorder under my cardigan. My father showed up with a story. He gravitated to the microphone like a moth to a porch light. "Folks," he boomed, farms still in the right hands. "Some in the family don't understand cash flow, but I do. Insurance money needs to work, not sit in a widow's account. We're building, not wasting." The room laughed uneasily. My phone didn't laugh. It captured every syllable. Afterward, he cornered me near the coat rack. "You're not going to that lawyer again," he said, breath warm with beer and certainty. I put on my scarf slowly. "You don't give me orders." He lifted his chin. "You don't know how to be taken care of." "I know how to take care of myself," I said. "You're just not used to watching it." He stepped closer, eyes cold. "You think those medals mean you're special? You're a woman alone. This family protects its assets." "From me," I asked, "or from your reflection?" He snorted. "You sound like a lawyer. You're not smart enough to be one." I brushed a fleck of lint from my sleeve. "You sound like a confession." He walked away muttering. I pressed stop. At home, Marcus set up 2 discreet cameras at my front and back doors, legal above board, obvious enough to deter, small enough not to spook June. "You call me if he shows up," he said. "We don't escalate. We record. We document. We stay inside the law." "I've lived inside laws more rigid than any county ordinance," I said. He pointed at the boots by the door. "Then lace your courage the same way." He handed me a small black pen. Looks like a pen. Records like a conscience. June watched from the stairs, serious as a sentry. Are we in trouble? She asked. We're in a process, I said. That's different. She came down one step, then another. Can we win? We don't win like in cartoons, I said. We win by telling the truth better than he can lie. She considered that, then nodded. Okay. The next morning, I scanned every page Valentina flagged. The old printer whirred and clicked like it was tired of secrets. I labeled folders with dates and little notes the way I used to label evidence bags. Who, what, where, how it connects. When my hands shook, I took a breath and put my feet against Daniel's boots until they settled. Rebecca called just after noon. Emergency petition ready, she said. Accounting injunction, preservation of occupancy. We'll attach exhibits A through J, bring the VFDU audio and Christmas dinner clip, and bring your steadiness. Roger. That I said automatic as muscle memory. The word surprised us both. We laughed, relieved. Hey, she added, voice softening, this isn't just about money. I know, I said. It's about who gets to tell me who I am. And about June, she said. And about June, I echoed. After we hung up, I stood at the kitchen window and watched snow begin again, soft, persistent, disinterested in anyone's opinion. I pressed my palm to the glass and thought about the girl in the next room building a fort out of couch cushions and courage. I thought about the man who used to sit here cleaning his wedding ring after long days in the field. I thought about my father's thumbprint on every page we'd copied and how men who mistake volume for virtue always seem surprised when the world is louder. I slid the recordings into a folder named Evidence Coal and sent encrypted copies to Rebecca and Valentina. Then I tucked a drive into the toe of Daniel's boot. Quiet collection completed. Next, the room where quiet turns into orders. The VFW potluck recording wasn't just noise on my phone, it was a thread, and once we tugged it, the whole sweater started to come apart. Valentina transcribed the clip with timestamps, then laid it beside the bank statements like 2 photos of the same storm taken from different angles. Listen here, she said, tapping the page. Insurance money needs to work, not sit in a widow's account. Now look at your father's account on the same date. She pointed to a deposit, $2,000 even timed 2 hours after the potluck ended. The memo line read, seed. But the farm supply store was closed that day. She slid another sheet forward, ATM footage metadata that showed a withdrawal from the machine inside the Moose Lodge within 10 minutes of the deposit hitting. Pride makes sloppy, Valentina said. He bragged before he laundered. Rebecca added the audio from Christmas dinner to the top of the stack. Context matters, she said. The law calls it coercive control. Juries call it cruelty. Judges call it tiresome. Either way, it supports motive. We built a timeline on a whiteboard in Rebecca's office, like a unit planning a mission. July 1st, temporary routing of funds into the farm's tax ID. August, Daniel's burial and a flurry of filings including the forged quitclaim. September, short deposits to the co-op ledger. October, cash withdrawals paired with repairs that left no receipts. November, bar tabs and seed checks on Sundays. December, stupid widow and a microphone. Who else heard him? Rebecca asked about the potluck. The room, I said, and the bartender. So we went back. The VFW bartender, a woman named Sherry with a gray ponytail and a voice that could cut ice, looked at the recorder I set on the counter, and then at me. You got a court order? She asked. Not yet, Rebecca said. We're asking for a statement. You can say no. Sherry shrugged. He likes the sound of his own stories. That night, he liked it too much. She wiped down the bar. He said the farm's in the right hands and insurance money shouldn't sit in a widow's account. He said it into a mic. People laughed because they didn't know whether to be mad or to pretend they weren't. I knew. She jerked her chin toward a small camera in the corner. We keep footage 30 days. I can burn you a copy if the commander signs off. Rebecca's card traveled down the bar. The commander signed within an hour. We left with a thumb drive in a brown envelope that felt heavier than its ounces. At the co-op, Marlene printed duplicate deposit slips and signed a statement about consistent shortfalls since August. I'll confirm under oath, she said. I thought you knew. I'm sorry. You do now, I said. That's what counts. Ed, the seed dealer, produced a dog-eared invoice book, and his blunt testimony, Jack pays cash when he says parts are back-ordered. Then I see the same parts come in 2 days later on someone else's ticket. Your husband was a good man. Don't let this be his legacy. We added it all to the whiteboard addresses. Times initials for witnesses. Note VFW video corroborates audio. The forged quitclaim was the piece that made Rebecca's mouth go into a thin line. Notaries are supposed to keep a journal, she said. We'll compare. The notary on the deed lived 2 towns over. Her office was a narrow slot between a tax preparer and a shuttered bakery. She put on her glasses and considered the copy. My seal, she said slowly. My name. But this ain't my book. What do you mean, I asked. She reached under the counter and pulled out a thick, worn ledger. My journal, she said. She flipped to the date in question. 3 neat entries, 2 car titles, and a signature witness for a PTA fundraiser, each with thumbprints and driver's license numbers. No coal, no farm. And I was in Omaha the next day for my niece's wedding. She added pulling up a photo of herself in a lemon-yellow dress on her phone, time-stamped. She printed an affidavit then and there. Fraud runs out of patience, Valentina repeated when we showed her the affidavit. Your father wanted the deed filed fast. He grabbed a name he recognized and hoped no one would check the book. The bank manager who'd handled my CD assignment sat ramrod straight behind his tidy desk, the kind of posture that suggests both pride and relief when the truth finally gets to stand up. He reviewed the copy my father had given me, then the original subpoenaed by Rebecca. These were printed from 2 different templates, he said, pointing to misaligned fonts and date fields. Also, this was recorded at 4:12 p.m., while I was having a meeting in that glass conference room, and Mr. Cole was in it. He glanced up. He brought donuts and said his daughter needed guidance. I assumed you were signing outside my office. If I'd known. He trailed off, then cleared his throat. I'll provide a statement, and I'll be reporting this to our compliance department. Please do, Rebecca said, not bothering to hide the satisfaction that sharpened her voice. We left the bank with paperwork heavy in hand and the small electric thrill of righteous momentum in the chest. It wasn't joy. This wasn't a joyful errand. It was something quieter and more durable alignment. At home that night, June did her math homework at the table while I reread statements. Is this for the judge? She asked, pointing to the binder I'd labeled Evidence Cole in black marker. Yes, I said. It helps her see what happened. She furrowed her brow. Grandpa will say you're lying? I thought about men in rooms accusing me of misunderstanding, of misremembering, of being too emotional to read numbers. I thought about how many times I'd second-guessed myself because someone with a louder voice told me I was wrong. Then we bring more truth, I said, tapping the binder, louder than his voice. She nodded, solemn as a juror. I tucked her into bed and returned to the whiteboard. I added 1 more column, chain of custody. It's a phrase that satisfies the part of me, the army-trained dates times, who held what where it lived between hands. Our evidence wasn't just facts. It was facts with a trail. Texts from my father asking for Daniel's orders for the scrapbook. A voicemail about right hands. The Christmas recording labeled and duplicated. The VFW audio with video backup. The notary's affidavit stapled to the deed copy so the lie and the truth could touch and show the difference. Paperwork is how the world remembers, Rebecca had said. We're going to help it remember correctly. 2 days later, Pastor Jim asked to stop by. He brought store-bought pie again and a straight spine. I've drafted a statement, he said. It says exactly what I heard and when. No apologizing, no softening. He handed me the paper. His handwriting was neat. Thank you, I said. He glanced toward the boots by the door. I didn't serve, he said quietly. But I'm learning something from your steadiness. It's borrowed, I said, nodding at the boots. But it fits. He smiled at that, a small, sad curve. Rebecca filed the emergency petition at 8:01 a.m. on a Wednesday. By lunchtime, we had a hearing set for Thursday afternoon. Bring the original, she texted. Wear whatever makes you feel like your spine shows. I set out my dark suit, the one I'd bought years ago for job interviews and funerals. I ironed the collar like a private, memorizing the shape of a salute. I sat at the table and went through the binder again page by page. The rhythm of it calmed me. Marcus checked the cameras, then leaned in the doorway, arms crossed. "He'll do something dumb before court," he said. "Men like him get loud when their leash tightens." "I know," I said. "You ready?" "Yes." He nodded, satisfied, and tapped the toe of one boot with his finger. "He'd be proud," he said. "I hope so," I said, because hoping doesn't cost dignity. That night, as snow began to tap the windows again, I closed the binder and placed it by the door. I set my phone and the recorder on top like two faithful dogs. I turned off the kitchen light and stood for a moment in the dark at ease for the first time in months. We tugged the thread. Tomorrow we'd show the sweater to a judge. And somewhere past that, I knew my father would make the mistake men like him always make when control slips. He'd try to squeeze harder. He'd overplay. He'd put it on paper. I was ready for paper. The injunction landed like a hammer on my father's kitchen table. I wasn't there to see it, but Rachel described it later. A deputy in a brown jacket, stiff shoulders, the official envelope laid flat beside the salt shaker. My father's jaw clenched so hard she thought his teeth might crack. By the time the deputy pulled away, my phone was buzzing with his number. I let it ring. Then his voice filled my voicemail. "You think a judge scares me? You think paper makes you right? You're a fool, Amanda. You're just a widow with friends who like to play lawyer." I saved it to the binder under Exhibit K. 3 days later, another envelope appeared in my mailbox. Certified mail, again stamped. Notice of termination of residence use. The language was cold, legal, sharp-edged. According to him, the farmhouse Daniel and I had lived in, the one where June had taken her first steps, where his boots still stood by the door, was trust property under management. I was listed as an occupant at will, 30 days to vacate. June found me holding it, my knuckles white. "What's wrong?" she asked. "Grandpa thinks this house belongs to him," I said carefully. "He's wrong." Her eyes grew wide. "But Daddy built my treehouse here." I crouched down, smoothing her hair. "And no one can take that from us. Not with any paper." She nodded, but her lip trembled. That night, I tucked her in with the stuffed rabbit Daniel had bought at the PX. She whispered, "If we have to move, can we take the treehouse?" "We're not moving," I said. My voice was steadier than I felt. Rebecca spread the eviction notice across her desk and read it twice. "He wrote this himself," she said flatly. "Sloppy. Wrong statutes, no proper notice period, and no authority under the trust." She tapped a line. "This isn't even the right county code." "But a judge could still glance and think it looks official," I said. "Exactly. That's why we hit back hard." She pulled out another folder. "We'll file a motion for protective occupancy and fraud." Valentina flipped the notice over like it might reveal another clue. "He's escalating because he's scared. Fraudsters don't issue eviction notices unless they're trying to flush someone out before the walls close in." She pulled up her laptop, fingers flying. "And here's the kicker, he filed another quitclaim last month this time, trying to assign the parcel with your house into his own name outright." She turned the screen toward me. My signature stared back, a clumsy imitation. "That's not mine," I said, ice rising in my chest. "Of course not," Valentina said. "Wrong loop on the D, wrong slant on the A. This is a cut and paste job. We'll prove it." Rebecca's jaw tightened. "He's not just insulting you anymore. He's trying to erase you." I called Marcus. He came over with a magnifying glass and his soldier's patience. He laid the forged deed under the lamp. "See here," he said, tracing a faint line. "This was scanned from another document. Look, pixels where ink should be. And the signature overlaps the printed margin. Amateur work." I wanted to cry, but the sight of Daniel's boots by Marcus's door kept me steady. I pressed my toes against them the way I always did. "He's sloppy because he thinks no one will challenge him," Marcus said. "Let's show him he's wrong." 2 nights later, June overheard me talking to Rebecca on the phone. She came downstairs in her pajamas, eyes wide. "Mom, why does Grandpa hate you?" I swallowed hard. "He doesn't hate me. He just doesn't know how to be kind. She frowned. But he says mean things. And he wants us to leave. Some people think love means control, I said. But that's not love. That's fear. Her little jaw tightened. Then we fight smart. The words hit me like a salute. From the mouth of a 9-year-old. From the blood of her father. Rebecca worked late drafting the emergency filings. Occupancy injunction fraud charges, request for fiduciary review, she listed sliding pages into the binder. We'll attach the forged deed, the eviction notice, and the recordings. Valentina stacked exhibits, bank statements, transcripts, co-op shortfalls. We'll highlight the pattern: financial abuse, fraudulent filings, coercive control. Marcus installed 2 new cameras at my house calibrated to upload automatically to a cloud drive. He handed me a sleek black device. Looks like a pen, he said. Records like a witness. Keep it in your pocket. If he tries to corner you, let him talk. He always talks, I said, slipping it into my purse. The night before the hearing, I drove past the farm. My father was on the porch, arms folded, shoulders, squared like a general guarding his fort. Rachel's car was there too. They stood side by side, united against me. I didn't wave. I didn't stop. I kept driving, heart hammering, but hands steady. Because tomorrow wasn't just about me. It was about June. About Daniel's name. About every time someone called me just a widow. Tomorrow we'd bring it to the room where truth gets weighed heavier than arrogance. The county courthouse smelled faintly of old wood and disinfectant. Like every decision ever made, there still lingered in the air. I walked through its double doors with my binder pressed tight to my chest, Daniel's boots polished in my memory, and June's steady eyes in my mind. Rebecca flanked me on one side, briefcase swinging like a shield. Valentina followed with a rolling case of documents. Marcus trailed quiet, but watchful, his veteran's gaze, scanning exits the way soldiers never stop doing. Inside courtroom 2B, the pews creaked with neighbors, farmers, and a few veterans who knew me from the VFW. Rachel sat stiffly behind my father, her chin high, but her hands folded tight in her lap. My father, Jack Cole, looked smaller than he used to, wrinkled suit jaw, working like he was chewing nails, but his eyes still burned with the same entitlement that had poisoned Christmas dinner. "All rise," the bailiff said. Judge Franklin entered, black robe, swaying glasses perched low. He glanced over the docket. Cole v. Cole. Emergency petition regarding occupancy trust management and allegations of forgery. His eyes swept the room. "Ms. Cole, are you represented?" Rebecca rose. "Rebecca Lawrence. Your Honor, for Amanda Cole." "And Mr. Cole?" A local lawyer with thinning hair stood. "Mark Shelton for Jack Cole." "Proceed," the judge said. Rebecca began, like a soldier, laying out coordinates. "Your Honor, this case arises from a pattern of financial misconduct and coercive control. My client is a widow, a veteran, and the sole beneficiary of her late husband's survivor benefits. The respondent, her father, has systematically misused those funds, filed forged documents, and attempted to evict her from the home she has lived in for over a decade." She clicked a remote. The screen behind the judge flickered on. Christmas dinner replayed in the silence of the courtroom. My father's voice echoed, "She's just a stupid widow, shut up." The words filled the wood-paneled room, ugly and undeniable. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Rachel's eyes closed for a moment, as if she wished she could close her ears too. Rebecca's voice stayed calm. "That recording was made in the presence of my client's 9-year-old daughter. It illustrates not only verbal cruelty, but a mindset that my client is to be silenced and controlled. That mindset carries into financial dealings." She handed up Exhibits A through J bank records, co-op ledgers, affidavits from Ed Marlene, Pastor Jim, and Sherry the bartender. Each told a piece of the story: short deposits, cash withdrawals, public boasting. Then came the forged deed. Rebecca slid the affidavit from the notary across the bench. "The seal is genuine. The signature is not. The notary's journal proves she was out of state. This is fraud, Your Honor." Judge Franklin leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "Mr. Shelton, how does your client respond?" The lawyer stammered. "My client, He believed the documents were legitimate. Any inconsistencies are clerical. Rebecca pressed play on the VFW recording. My father's voice rang out, "Insurance money needs to work, not sit in a widow's account. We're building, not wasting." The judge looked directly at my father. "Did you say these words?" My father lifted his chin. "I said something like that. I was joking." The judge's voice was flat. That didn't sound like a joke. Then it was my father's turn on the stand. He sat heavily, hands folded, eyes darting between the judge and the crowd. "Mr. Cole," Rebecca began, "did you attempt to evict your daughter from her home with this notice?" She held up the certified letter. "Yes," he said. "The trust gives me authority." "The trust gives you management authority, not ownership. Do you understand the difference?" His mouth worked. "She doesn't know what to do with property." "I do." "So you filed this notice?" "Yes." "And this quitclaim deed?" "Yes." "Did your daughter sign it?" He hesitated. "She should have. It was in her best interest." "Did she sign it?" Rebecca pressed. He swallowed. "Not exactly, but..." Rebecca cut him off. "So you admit you filed a deed with her forged signature?" Murmurs rippled through the room. My father's lawyer objected, but the damage was done. My father had confessed in open court to forging his own daughter's signature. Judge Franklin's gavel rapped once. "Order. I've heard enough." He looked straight at my father. "Mr. Cole, you've abused your authority as trustee. You've committed forgery. You've attempted to evict your daughter without legal standing. Effective immediately, you are removed as trustee. Control of the trust is transferred to an independent fiduciary. The forged deed and eviction notice will be referred to the district attorney for criminal review." My father surged to his feet, face red. "She embarrassed me in front of everyone. She disrespects me. I built this farm." The judge's gavel cracked again. "Sit down, Mr. Cole, or I'll hold you in contempt. This courtroom does not exist to protect your pride." My father collapsed back into his chair, shoulders sagging. For the first time in my life, he looked smaller than me. The judge turned to me. "Ms. Cole, you and your daughter are granted full occupancy rights in the farmhouse. No further interference is permitted. You've shown courage, discipline, and thorough documentation. Court is adjourned." As the gavel fell, relief washed over me. Not the loud kind with tears and shouts, but the quiet kind that feels like setting down a rucksack after a long march. Rebecca squeezed my shoulder. Valentina closed the binder with a snap. Marcus gave the smallest of nods, the kind soldiers give when the mission's complete. I walked past my father without meeting his eyes. Rachel's hand reached out, brushed mine for a second, then withdrew. A silent apology, or maybe just an acknowledgement that she'd seen the truth too. Outside, the winter sun cut across the courthouse steps, bright and cold. June was waiting with Marcus's wife. She ran into my arms, her voice breathless. "Did we win?" I kissed her hair. "We told the truth. That's winning enough." Snow was still on the ground the morning after court, but it looked different. Less like a weight, more like a clean sheet spread across the fields. For the first time in years, I breathed without feeling my father's shadow pressing down on me. The farmhouse was quiet, safe, and ours. But freedom is never just an ending. It's a beginning. Word spread fast in a county where everybody knows what kind of pie you brought to the last church social. By evening, neighbors were calling, some with awkward apologies, some with casseroles, some just to say, "We didn't know." At the grocery store, Pastor Jim shook my hand harder than necessary. "You carried yourself with dignity," he said. The whole town saw it. Even Marlene from the co-op left a bag of sugar cookies on our porch with a note for June. Bravery should be sweetened. Rachel came by one night, eyes red, but shoulders squared. She stood on the porch, shifting from foot to foot. "I should have spoken up sooner," she said. "I knew Dad was pushing you around. I was scared of him too." I didn't hug her, but I didn't shut the door either. "Fear makes cowards of a lot of us," I said. "But it doesn't have to keep us there." She nodded, silent tears streaking down her cheeks. Rebecca urged me to think bigger. "What you did in that courtroom," she said, "it wasn't just for you. Other widows, other veterans, they're fighting the same battles. Maybe quieter, maybe with fewer allies. You could help. The idea stuck. So did Daniel's voice in my memory, reminding me that service didn't stop when you took the uniform off. Within a month, we registered the Gold Star and Veteran Widow Support Fund. We started small a basement office at the Legion Hall, a phone line, a folder of resources. But word spread. Women came with questions about survivor benefits, forged signatures, bank accounts suddenly drained. Some came just needing to sit across from someone who understood the loneliness of being underestimated. Each time I thought of my father's words, "stupid widow," and each time I proved him wrong. One Saturday, June and I stood at the Veterans Memorial downtown. She pinned her father's insignia onto a wreath, her small hands steady. "Dad's watching, right?" she asked. "Yes," I said, "and he's proud." She looked up at me. "And you're a soldier, too, not just a widow." I swallowed hard. "That's right, sweetheart." We walked away together, the winter sun bright on the bronze names of men and women who'd given everything. As for my father, pride wouldn't let him admit defeat, but the community did it for him. Folks stopped laughing at his bar stories. The VFW commander asked him to take some time away. The district attorney opened an investigation into the forged deed. One night, Rachel called. "He sits in the kitchen, Amanda. Just sits. Doesn't talk, doesn't brag. Like somebody finally told him the fight was over." I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. His last mistake had been underestimating me, and it had cost him everything he thought he controlled. A year later, the support fund had an office downtown with a sign in the window, "Strength is Service. Widows and veterans welcome." Valentina ran financial workshops twice a month. Rebecca handled legal clinics on Tuesdays. Marcus coordinated security for women leaving dangerous homes. And me, I listened. I kept records. I told them what I had learned, that writing things down, saving receipts, and standing tall in court mattered more than shouting in kitchens. That dignity outlasts humiliation. That a soldier's training isn't wasted, even in civilian life. On the anniversary of that Christmas dinner, I cooked ham and cinnamon rolls for June and me. We sat at the same table where my father once spat his insult. This time, there was laughter. There was music. There was peace. I raised my glass of cider. "To endings," I said. June clinked hers. "And to beginnings." I smiled. "Exactly. If you've followed this story to the end, maybe you've carried your own weight of words spoken to diminish you. Maybe someone told you that you were just something, just a widow, just a worker, just too old, just too small. Don't believe them. The truth is, you're never just anything. You are more than the insult, stronger than the shadows, and steadier than those who try to cut you down. So if this story spoke to you, I invite you to share it with someone who needs courage tonight. Leave a comment with your thoughts, or subscribe if you'd like to hear more stories of justice, resilience, and quiet strength. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't shouting louder. It's standing taller, walking away smiling, and building something that lasts. And that's exactly what we did.